Hi everybody, welcome to Friday at the Farm. I'm Suzanne Huff, and today we're going to take another field trip, this time over to the Stephen Martin Cemetery. And this is kind of a hidden cemetery. It's located behind the Marshall's Nordstrom Rack Shopping Center off of Hammond Drive. Come join us. Sitting quietly between an office building and a shopping center is a small family cemetery that very few folks know about. This is the family cemetery of Stephen Martin, hidden between commercial development at the Hammond Drive Perimeter Center Parkway intersection and I-285. Though small and seemingly inconsequential, the cemetery caused a slight rerouting of I-285 during construction back in the 60s and 70s. And where we are located is right behind, over here is the Marshalls and the Nordstrom Rack Shopping Center at this end, which is where we parked. And over here is the old Gold Kiss building. So follow us up this path to see the Stephen Martin Cemetery. So just who was Stephen Martin? The land which encompasses Dunwoody was once home to the Cherokee Indians. 200 years ago this year, in 1821, the Georgia Land Lottery attracted pioneers from South Carolina looking to own land in Georgia. One of those pioneers was Stephen Martin, who with his wife Fanny and their firstborn son James made the journey from Lawrence County, South Carolina. By the time Stephen passed away in the mid-1860s, he had amassed over 400 acres of land. This family cemetery is home to 42 known burials and 29 other visible graves, mostly children. Many graves in the cemetery are unidentified, some marked only with one field stone or a headstone and a footstone. The earliest known burial here was that of Stephen Martin's first wife, Frances Elizabeth, or Fanny Garrett Martin, who passed away in 1847 at age 45. However, it's likely that some of the unmarked graves are from an earlier date. A Confederate veteran is buried here, as is a World War I veteran. The most recent burial was in 1992. Upon entering the cemetery, you will quickly see 3 stone cairn graves at the front of the cemetery. You don't often see graves like these. They're usually hidden away in rural family cemeteries off the beaten path, which is exactly what this cemetery was until Dunwoody started to grow about 50 years ago. These graves belong to Stephen Martin and his 2 wives. It is believed his first wife, Fanny, is buried here in front on the right, and his second wife, Sarah Crowley Kahela Martin, is buried on the far left with Stephen Martin in the middle. The smaller stone grave to the right of Fanny is believed to be one of their children. Frances Elizabeth, or Fanny Garrett, was born around 1802 in Lawrence County, South Carolina, and she married Stephen Martin in 1819. Fanny and Stephen had 7 children: James, Parthena, Sarah, Martha, Benjamin, Naomi, and Sophia. And we believe this is her cairn here, her grave. In the middle, we believe, is Stephen Martin. And then here on the far right, in this case far right, I'm looking at a different direction, was his second wife. 7 years after Fanny passed away, Stephen Martin married Sarah Crowley Kahela in 1854. Stephen and Sarah had 3 children of their own: Margaret, Nancy, and William S. Martin. And it's believed that Sarah's grave at one time had a wooden shingle type cover. Fanny and Stephen's daughter Naomi, known as Omi, married Thomas Franklin Sproul in 1866, about a year after Thomas returned from serving in the Civil War. Thomas and Omi's graves, along with those of 4 of their children and 1 grandchild, can be found just north of the kiosk in a row, which is surrounded by a stone border. All these children died before the age of 8, which was common at the time. And right here with the flag, that is Thomas Franklin Sproul's grave. He's the one who fought in the Civil War. Next to him is Omi. And then here's their 4 children that passed away very young, and their grandchild. In 1864, at the age of 21, Stephen and Fanny Martin's youngest daughter, Sophia, married Joseph T. Sproul. They had 8 children of their own, and Joseph and Sophia Sproul are married here in the 5th row of the cemetery, but only Sarah Cordelia, their daughter, who lived just a short time, is buried beside them. Their son, Naya, is buried to the right and back of their plot a little bit, right here. Glenn Fuse, a volunteer with DPT, began clearing the overgrown cemetery years ago, and it remains in his care today. So I want to thank Glenn very much for all his work out here and introduce you to him now. And I want to introduce Glenn Fuse. He comes out here and takes care of the cemetery. Glenn, how did you start coming out here? What made you start coming?
Well, it was in 2014. I decided I wanted to go around and look at all the 5 historic cemeteries within Dunwoody, and this one being on the list, that's how I came here. And it's not the easiest to find, and you sometimes think that there's nothing at the top of the hill, but there is, and it was this cemetery. When I first started coming here, it was completely covered. You couldn't see the stones. The weeds had grown so high, so I don't know when the last time anybody had done anything. I have no idea. But I decided that that would be a good project for me to clean up the cemetery and frankly show some respect to the many people that are buried here. And of course, the cemetery is quite old, with the first person, Mrs. Martin, having died in 1847. So it's got to go back to somewhere around that time when they started here, and that would be one of these three Karen cemetery burial plots here is where she is. And the second wife and Mr. Martin are also buried in these, and it's assumed a child here. But these, again, none of this was really viewable at the time. You couldn't see the fence over there or anything. That's the kind of shape it was in. Although you can see from the fence, at some point, somebody took really good care of the cemetery. So I decided it would be a good project. And through the years, I've developed a couple of favorites. Little Homer, who's buried here, who passed in 1902 at the age of 2, if I'm thinking right. And at the other end of the cemetery, they're kind of the cornerstones east and west of the cemetery to me. At the other end down there is Eddie Moore, who's buried with his grandparents. I thought it was a real shame that Eddie, at the time I didn't know any better, I thought he was by himself. I found out years later from his sister, who still comes here and leaves flowers, that he wasn't by himself, that he was buried with his grandparents, just a different last name. These two have always been special to me, just because I don't really know why. They just have been, and I know that Eddie was stillborn and never drew a breath, in other words, and so that made it a little different and special to me too. You walk around the cemetery, many of the graves are for children. It was clearly that era was a very difficult time to reach adulthood. Many of them are children. Many of them signified by the lambs on top of the stones, and others probably just buried with field stones. And there's a number of field stones in here too. So who knows who those people really were and if they were adults? But it was difficult. I've always also been taken with these two burial plots here that are obviously made of cement, and that has never been identified, even in the cemetery book when this was surveyed in 1938, I think it was, in the 30s. They weren't identified then either as who was buried there, so it's kind of a mystery, and they're very interesting just in their construction. I need to mention that, and actually it all took place in 2015. We were fortunate enough to have Eagle Scouts here working at the Eagle Scout projects. You can see this kiosk here and the two benches, one over there underneath the dogwood tree, and the kiosk and this bench here. They were built as an Eagle Scout project. We were fortunate to have that. The varsity football team from Dunwoody showed up here for a couple of days and did all the clean out around the fences and around the perimeter and all this around here to get rid of the heavy lifting there. I think I'm correct in saying it was like 3 full dumpsters with a brush that they took out of here. So again, it would be improper not to mention the help that those two groups gave us here at the cemetery. And it was a lot of fun working with them. Great group of people.
When the Sproul and Martin relatives sold part of the land for construction of Perimeter Mall and the development around it, they made sure that the cemetery wasn't touched and would be protected. So if you're ever tired of shopping and want to enjoy a little Dunwoody history, stop by the Stephen Martin Cemetery and step back in time amid all the chaos. It's quite peaceful and beautiful here, particularly this time of year with all the dogwoods blooming. Thanks for joining us today. And I want to point out that tomorrow is the 1-year anniversary that we started doing these Friday at the Farm videos. So we've done 53 straight videos, and I'm starting to run out of topics. We started last April as a means to reach out to our audience and learn some history and what's going on here at the Donaldson Bannister Farm, and I think we've accomplished that. At this point, we're going to start doing it on a monthly basis. So instead of every Friday, we're going to be the first Friday of the month. And I will see y'all then. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you the first Friday of May. Thanks. See you soon.